Hi there, I'm Lacey. And yes, my mother slapped me right at my own wedding. Why? Because I refused to hand over my $50,000 wedding fund to my brother. But that wasn't the beginning, and it sure wasn't the worst of it. They faked emails, spread rumors, even tried to destroy my job, my relationship, everything. I kept asking myself, how far will your own family go to break you, just to protect the one who keeps failing? And when the truth finally hit me, it wasn't just betrayal, it was a lifetime of being the backup plan. The breeze carried the scent of lavender and freshly turned soil as I stepped onto the cobbled patio of the vineyard. Strings of warm lights hung above us like stars pinned in place, casting a golden hue over the rustic tables and rows of guests holding glasses of wine. Everything about that afternoon had felt surreal. The flowers, the laughter, the way Dorian looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. I'd always imagined my engagement party would be intimate, sweet, maybe even a little chaotic with all the family personalities in one place. But I never imagined it would be the moment everything started unraveling. Dorian was across the patio, talking to my cousin Drew near the bar. He looked effortlessly put together, sleeves rolled up, glass in hand, smiling at something Drew had just said. I smiled too, watching him. He made me feel safe, real. Like this life we were building together had solid ground beneath it. My mother, Wanda, was making the rounds. She wore her usual pastel suit, the kind that screamed Southern matriarch with something to prove, and carried a smile that had fooled strangers for decades. My father, Marvin, stood nearby as her silent shadow, present, but never interfering. I had barely finished my sparkling water when I heard the clinking of a spoon against glass. Wanda stood near the center of the gathering, a wineglass raised delicately in her left hand. "Can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" she asked sweetly, but her tone carried the weight of something more. The crowd quieted. Dorian stepped back toward me. I straightened my spine. "I just want to say how proud Marvin and I are of our daughter," she began, gesturing toward me. "Lacey, you've grown into a thoughtful, accomplished woman. Dorian, we're thrilled to welcome you into the family." A warm round of applause followed. A few people tapped their glasses for a kiss, which Dorian and I obliged with a small chuckle. But then Wanda raised her hand again. "And, while we're on the topic of weddings," she continued, her voice taking on a slightly different texture, "there's something important we've been thinking about as a family." My heart sank, just a hair. I didn't know what was coming, but the way she looked at me made my palms cold. "As you all know," she said, "Lacey has had a $50,000 fund set aside for her wedding since she was 17, a gift from Marvin and me." People nodded. I caught a few raised eyebrows. "But Kendrick's getting married next year too," she added, shifting the direction of the spotlight with expert ease. "And unlike Lacey, he's had some real setbacks. School debt, business troubles. Life hasn't exactly been kind." She paused, then smiled, a smile too polished to be sincere. "So, Marvin and I have decided to redistribute the wedding fund. To make things fair, Kendrick will receive half." The clapping stopped. You could hear the wine settling in the glasses. I didn't move at first. I didn't even blink. I looked at her. Then at Kendrick, who stood a few feet away, trying to look modest but failing miserably behind that smug little smirk he always wore when he got his way. I took a slow breath, then spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "No." Some people chuckled nervously, thinking maybe I was playing along. But I wasn't. "My wedding fund is mine. You gave it to me when I was 17. I've planned responsibly. I've never asked for more. I'm not sharing it." Wanda's smile tightened. Marvin, of course, said nothing. Kendrick made a dramatic shrug, like, "What's the big deal?" Wanda stepped forward, wineglass still in hand. "We thought you'd be more understanding," she said, her voice dropping low enough for only those nearest to hear. "You always had more than him. You should know when it's time to give back." "Sharing isn't the same as being robbed," I said, keeping my voice level. "Especially when it's disguised as generosity." Her jaw clenched slightly. Then she smiled again, this time as if warning me with her teeth. After a few murmurs and awkward coughs, the crowd slowly returned to conversation. But the energy had shifted. The celebration had thinned. Later, after the toast, I found myself near the pergola at the edge of the venue. The vines curled around the beams, their new green shoots reaching toward the sky like they hadn't just been scorched by my mother's brand of affection. Wanda found me again, this time alone. "You should think about postponing the wedding," she said softly but not kindly, "until we sort all this out as a family." "Postpone it?" I blinked. "Because Kendrick's broke?" "Because it would show maturity. Grace, character." "I've already shown character. I budgeted, I saved. I didn't blow mine on bad investments and rented Instagram models." Her nostrils flared, but she didn't lose composure. "You're acting like this day is only about you." I let out a short laugh. "That's because it is, Mom. It's my engagement party. Or at least it was." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Kendrick watching us. He raised a glass as if to say cheers, then turned back to schmooze a few cousins. I didn't have to say another word. I walked past my mother and back into the crowd, though I felt like I was walking into a battlefield instead of a celebration. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I smiled where I needed to, nodded through conversations, posed for photos I never wanted to look at again. By the time we got home, I was drained. I sat on the edge of our bed, pulled out my wedding planning journal, and opened it to a fresh page. Nothing came. Not a single idea. Not a venue note or budget tweak or timeline revision. I stared at the page, then shut the book. This wasn't how it was supposed to feel. "This is my wedding," I whispered to the dark room, "but it already feels like a hostage negotiation." Morning light slipped through the curtains, landing in stripes across the end of our bed. I hadn't slept well. The weight of the previous evening pressed down on me like a second blanket. Thick, suffocating. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. I lay there for a few more minutes, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it rotated slowly overhead. Dorian stirred beside me, already halfway to sitting up. "You okay?" he asked gently, voice still gravelly with sleep. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He didn't push. He rarely did when he sensed I needed space. That's one of the things I appreciated most about him. He wasn't a fixer. He was a listener. And sometimes that's more powerful. I shuffled out of bed and padded to the kitchen. The scent of coffee was already brewing, rich and grounding. He had started it for me, a small act of love, but this morning it felt monumental. As I poured my cup, my phone buzzed on the counter. Then again, and again. The first was from my Aunt Monica. "He's your brother, Lacey. You know what he's been through. Maybe it's time to think bigger than just yourself." Then a message from a cousin I barely spoke to. "Wow, cold move at your party. Family comes first, remember?" And another, this one from someone I didn't even recognize right away. "He would have done it for you. Don't let money break the family." I set the phone down and pushed my cup away, appetite gone. I hadn't even posted anything, not a word. But the group chats and family texts were buzzing like a hive, and I was the wasp they'd decided to swat. Dorian stepped into the kitchen, handed me a slice of toast I hadn't asked for. "Wanda's working the phones, huh?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "She doesn't waste time." He leaned against the counter. "Let me guess. Kendrick's the underdog, you're the villain." "I guess that makes you the enabler," I said, trying to smile, but my lips barely cooperated. 2 days passed with little relief. I tried to distract myself, work, planning, laundry, even alphabetizing the spice rack. Nothing worked. The silence between me and my family had only deepened, except for the noise they were generating behind my back. On the third morning, I had an appointment at a boutique downtown to try on a dress I'd secretly loved more than the one I'd already chosen. It was quieter than the others, tucked in an old brick building with soft lighting and polished wood floors. A place that made you feel like you were about to say yes to more than just a gown. I slipped into the ivory dress, lace wrapping around my shoulders like a whisper. As I turned in front of the mirror, admiring the silhouette, the assistant knocked gently on the dressing room door. "Miss Gellner?" she said. "There's a woman here asking for you. She says she's your mother, said it's urgent." My breath caught for half a second. "Send her back," I said, voice steady. "But I'm not changing." Wanda walked in less than a minute later, composed but clearly performing. "Oh, honey," she breathed, looking me up and down. "You look beautiful. That dress suits you. I didn't respond. She paused, then stepped closer. I came to talk, that's all. I just think we need to clear the air. There's nothing unclear, I said. You tried to take my money in front of 50 people. She winced. You always make things sound worse than they are. Before I could respond, her face changed. Her hand moved to her chest. She wobbled slightly. Mom? She staggered back, clutching her chest dramatically, eyes fluttering. I can't breathe. One of the assistants rushed in, calling for help. Another grabbed a chair. Wanda let herself fall into it, gasping. Call 911, she whispered. Please. I didn't move. I just watched, cold rising in my stomach. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked her vitals, ran through questions. One of them turned to me. She's stable, heart rate's fine, no signs of arrhythmia. She might be under stress. She always is, I muttered. They left soon after. Wanda insisted she didn't need to go to the hospital, just needed to sit a while. When the staff cleared out, I leaned in and whispered low. You staged that. Her eyes flicked up, lips barely parting. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. She stood slowly. You used to care when I was hurting. I used to believe it was real. She smoothed her jacket and walked out of the boutique without another word. I stayed behind, numb. The assistant offered me a glass of water, which I accepted, still dressed in that once perfect gown. That evening I received a call from the boutique manager. Hi, Lacey, she said carefully. Just wanted to confirm. Did you want to cancel your fittings and transfer your deposit? I blinked. What? No, I never said that. Oh, well, someone claiming to be your mother made the request right after the ambulance left. We thought it was strange but didn't want to overstep. She paused. She also suggested your stress level made you unfit to finalize anything right now. I felt the sting like a slap across the face. She had no right, I said. Please reinstate everything, and if she contacts you again, call me first, always. Of course, she said gently. You're our bride. Only you. After hanging up, I dropped my phone on the couch and sat still for a long time. I didn't cry. Not yet. That night, I pulled an old photo out from the back of my desk drawer. Me and Kendrick, maybe 16 and 14. His arm looped around my shoulder, both of us smiling into the camera. But even then, my smile had never quite reached my eyes. I set the photo down gently on the edge of my desk, letting my fingers linger just a second longer than necessary. There was a time, brief, blurry, when I believed Kendrick and I could have been close. But looking at that photo now, all I could think about was how long I'd been told to pretend. It was just past 10 p.m., and Dorian had already gone to bed. I stayed in the office, surrounded by old boxes we hadn't yet unpacked since moving into our townhouse. Somewhere in one of them, I remembered, were the original bank documents, the ones that showed when the wedding fund had been created. I dug them out. The pages were yellowing at the edges, but the ink was clear. 2 custodial accounts. One for Kendrick. One for me. Set up when I was 17 and he was 15. Same starting balance, same terms. But only one of us had something left. I sat on the floor, the weight of that realization heavier now than it had been then. I remembered the way my parents used to say, "It's yours to use wisely when the time comes." I took that to heart. I chose a state university, worked part-time, earned scholarships. I spent modestly. I planned. Kendrick didn't. He opted for a small private school in Phoenix, dropped out in under 2 years, spent the rest on a custom sneaker business, bought gear, booked photographers, threw a launch party at a rooftop bar in Scottsdale. It flopped in 6 months. When I asked once what happened to his fund, my dad looked up from his paper and muttered, "It's not something we talk about, honey. He's figuring it out. Figuring it out." That was always the excuse. The phrase that was supposed to explain away recklessness and entitlement. I had heard it since we were kids. The next morning, I got a notification on my phone, a tag on someone's Instagram story. I didn't recognize the username right away, but I tapped anyway. It was Kendrick. On a boat. Lake Havasu. Clear blue water in the background, red Solo cups stacked on a floating cooler, and Kendrick laughing, shirtless, his arm around some guy I'd never seen. In the next frame, he toasted with a group of friends. Shout out to Kendrick for renting this beast! One guy yelled into the camera. My stomach twisted. It wasn't even jealousy. It was nausea. How easily he could play broke one day and flex the next. In another story, he wore Gucci slides, the kind that cost more than my wedding veil, and oversized black shades I recognized from a luxury pop-up I'd seen months ago. At the same time, I scrolled up to read his most recent text to me. We're still waiting on your response about the wedding fund. Be decent. Be decent. I stared at the words for a full minute before locking my screen and setting the phone down face first. My hands were trembling. But it wasn't rage, not exactly. It was clarity, like stepping into a room I hadn't realized was filled with smoke. By noon, I had already pulled up every screenshot, receipt, and message I had. I opened a new folder titled Fund War and started documenting everything. That afternoon, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Ryan. We'd met briefly in college, but he was really Kendrick's friend. I hesitated before opening it. Hey, Lacey, I know this is random, but I saw your brother's IG. Just thought you should know. He still owes me $1,200. I blinked, reading it again. Said he needed help buying inventory for some sneaker thing. Promised to pay me back double. That was almost 2 years ago. I replied simply, "Thank you for telling me." A moment later, he sent a voice note. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. His voice was calm but bitter. Your brother's been playing everyone for years, including your parents. Look, I get it. You want to believe people grow, but he's not broke. He's addicted to looking like a winner. The truth rang so loud I almost dropped the phone. That night, I sat at the kitchen counter, laptop open, phone beside me, documents spread out. I didn't touch my wine. I barely touched dinner. I watched Kendrick's story loop again, his laugh echoing through the speaker. I watched it not with fury, but with a strange sense of relief. Because now I knew. This wasn't just a difference in choices. It wasn't about hard luck or bad timing. It was about who Kendrick chose to be, and who my parents chose to protect. This isn't some one-time misunderstanding, I whispered to myself. This is who he is, and they all knew it. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the kitchen as I stared at my laptop screen. I hadn't moved in almost 20 minutes. My dinner sat untouched beside me, grilled salmon and steamed vegetables Dorian had brought home, trying to cheer me up. But I couldn't bring myself to lift the fork. A notification buzzed on my phone, followed by another. My stomach tensed as I reached for it. The first was a voicemail from my cousin Melissa. Hey, Lacey, I'm so sorry. I heard about you and Dorian. I had no idea he cheated. If you want to talk, I'm here. My breath caught halfway through the message. Cheated? The second notification was a text from another friend. He seemed so loyal. I hope you're okay. If you need anything, just say the word. I sat up straighter, heat rising to my cheeks. I immediately called Melissa. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, she said cautiously. What did you hear exactly? I asked. She paused. Your mom called me yesterday. She said the wedding was off, that Dorian had been unfaithful, and you were trying to handle it privately. That's a lie, I said flatly. A complete lie. Melissa hesitated. She sounded pretty upset. I just thought, well, I didn't know what to think. I thanked her and hung up. My pulse was racing. I opened my email, and there it was. Several unread messages from acquaintances and coworkers. Subject lines like, checking in on you. Hearts with you. Sorry to hear. I opened one from my old roommate Lauren. I just got your wedding cancellation. Didn't see that coming, but I'm proud of you for prioritizing your healing. I hadn't sent anything. Then I saw it. The sender's email looked like mine, but it wasn't. One extra letter. A domain swap. It was a fake account, created to look real. The message read, Dear friends and family, due to recent events and the need for personal healing, Dorian and I have decided to postpone the wedding. Thank you for your understanding. It was signed with my full name. My throat tightened. This wasn't just petty sabotage anymore. They weren't just trying to get the money. They were trying to erase my narrative, rewrite my life. I texted Dorian, We need to talk when you're home. Urgent. Sleep didn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Wanda's carefully constructed smile, Kendrick's smug expression behind designer sunglasses, and now this, an invisible knife aimed directly at my credibility. By morning, I had barely eaten half a banana before heading to the office. My boss, Sarah, intercepted me near the elevator. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked, gently but firmly. We stepped into her office. She closed the door. "We received something concerning," she began, sliding a printout across the desk. It was a screenshot of an anonymous email with a link to a video, grainy footage of someone who looked like me in a compromising scene with a man I'd never seen before. The background was dim, the face unclear, but the voice, my voice, had been crudely mimicked. "We know it's not you," Sarah said quickly, trying to reassure me, "but it was sent to 5 people, including HR. My hands turned ice cold. The subject line was, "Know who you're working with," she added. "We're handling it discreetly, but I thought you should know." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. An hour later, I left early. I told HR I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. As I sat in the driver's seat of my car, parked behind the office, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. "They're not coming after the wedding anymore," I whispered aloud. "They're coming after me." I got home before Dorian. I changed into a hoodie and curled up on the back porch, the Arizona air unusually cool for late spring. When he walked through the sliding door, I didn't say anything. I just handed him my phone. He scrolled through the emails, then watched the video, his jaw tightening, his breathing shallow. "This is," he started, then stopped. "This is criminal." "Do you believe me?" I asked, quieter than I meant to. "I never stopped," he replied. He set the phone down, pulled me into his chest, and held me there until the shaking in my hands stopped. For a while, we didn't speak. "They want to ruin me before I even get to the altar," I said finally. But the moment the words left my lips, something inside me shifted. I was done playing nice. I was done hoping someone else would fix it. If they wanted a war, they were about to learn what I looked like in armor. The next morning began quiet, too quiet. Dorian had already left for work, and the house felt unusually still. I stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold 15 minutes ago. I didn't move. I just stared out the window, watching a hummingbird hover near the patio feeder, fluttering, restless, trying to hold still, the same way I felt inside. I picked up my phone and opened my contact list. My thumb hovered over Kendrick's name. I hadn't spoken to him directly in months, not since before the engagement party. Every fight, every manipulation had filtered through my parents. But that day, something shifted. I wasn't going to wait for someone else to protect me anymore. I was done being polite. I pressed call. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. I didn't hang up. I took a breath and said, "If you want to be a man, Kendrick, pick up your phone." Then I ended the call and waited. An hour later, my phone lit up. He was calling. I picked up and said nothing. "What's up, big sis?" he said, all faux charm. "Missed me?" I kept my voice even. "I know about the fake email, the video, the deepfake, the messages you or someone close to you sent to my coworkers. I know everything." He laughed, short, sharp. "You think I have time to create fake videos? You're giving me a little too much credit." "Don't lie, Kendrick. I've already talked to people. You were sloppy." "What people?" "Alicia, ring a bell?" I asked. She said you did the same thing to her. Fake messages, threats, tried to ruin her reputation when she dumped you. He went silent. A long pause followed. I didn't wait for him to speak. "I've got the video files, IP logs, screenshots. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. If you thought you could play me like one of your frat buddies, you chose the wrong target." Still, he said nothing. I lowered my voice. "Next time you try to ruin someone, Kendrick, pick a target who's dumber than you." Then I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt like I'd finally stood up in a room full of people who'd spent years telling me to sit down. I turned to my laptop and opened a new email. This time it was for Wanda and Marvin. No CC, no emotional preamble. Just facts. Subject, final notice. If either of you contacts anyone in my life again, co-workers, friends, extended family, I will pursue legal action. I have the recordings, the digital trail, the witnesses. You get one chance to stop. Use it wisely. I hit send. No hesitation, no tremble in my fingers. The reply never came, but the silence, it was deafening and revealing. I forwarded the email to Kaylin, my attorney. Within minutes, she replied, "That was strong. You're protecting your life, not just your money." She was right. I wasn't just safeguarding a wedding or a bank account. I was reclaiming my dignity, my narrative, my peace. Later that week, Dorian and I met with our wedding planner, Jocelyn. Her studio smelled like eucalyptus and paper. The whiteboards were filled with seating charts and flower combinations, but we didn't waste time on aesthetics. "Cut Kendrick, Wanda, and Marvin from the guest list," I told her. She blinked. "All of them?" "No backdoor access, not even the parking lot, I'm serious." She nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll inform security. Want me to circulate photos to the team?" "Yes," I said. "Circulate everything." Dorian added calmly, "If they show up, escort them out immediately. No second chances." Jocelyn hesitated again. "Are you absolutely sure?" I met her eyes. "If they come near me again, they'll regret it." We finalized everything. The new entrance list, security arrangements, code words for staff. As we wrapped up, I glanced down at my wedding binder. The glossy cover reflected my face, stern, clear-eyed, and so far from the daughter my parents once molded. "They've mistaken my silence for submission," I said quietly. Dorian placed his hand over mine. "Not anymore." I looked at the schedule, the RSVP list, the caterer details. No fear, no guilt, no doubt. They'll see who I really am. The following Monday started like any other. I was in the middle of reviewing a vendor invoice when my phone buzzed on the desk. It was Dorian, not a text, a call. I answered immediately. "Everything okay?" He didn't respond right away. Then, "You need to come to my office. Now." His tone wasn't sharp. It wasn't panicked. It was cold, like something had been drained from him. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and was in the car within minutes. His office wasn't far, just 15 minutes across town. But every red light felt like an hour. When I arrived, he met me at the front lobby. He looked calm on the surface, but I saw it in his eyes. Something had cracked. He handed me a manila envelope, already opened. "It came addressed to you. Here." Inside were 5 printed stills, screenshots from the fake video Kendrick had circulated. Grainy, low res, but enough to trigger suspicion in anyone not looking closely. And on top of them, a handwritten note. "Are you sure she's the one?" I stared at the paper like it might catch fire in my hands. "Who opened it?" I asked. My manager saw it first. It was dropped off by courier before I got in. Humiliation didn't even register. Not anymore. It had evolved. What I felt now wasn't shame. It was rage, pure, blistering rage. "They're not just trying to humiliate me," I said slowly. "This is warfare, psychological warfare." Dorian nodded. "I told my manager the whole story. They believe us. But this is insane." "No," I corrected. "This is criminal." I left Dorian's office without saying much more. I needed space to think, to plan. By the time I got home, I was already dialing Kaylin Voss. She answered after 2 rings. "I've got something new," I said, pacing the living room floor. It was sent directly to Dorian's office, with a note. "Good," she replied. "That's enough. We'll escalate." We filed the paperwork that same day. A formal cease and desist to Kendrick Gellner, included in it civil harassment language, digital stalking reference, and potential defamation charges, all legal tools locked and loaded. "He'll laugh at first," Kaylin said, scanning the draft. "But he won't laugh when a court summons shows up in his inbox." "I don't care if he laughs," I said. "I care that it ends." We started organizing a timeline. Every email, every fake message, every printed threat. I built a digital file, labeled each entry, attached screenshots, audio, metadata logs. "If this goes public," I told Kaylin, "we do it on our terms. Full story, full context." "Truth with receipts is bulletproof," she said. It was the first thing anyone had said to me in days that made me smile. That night I sat alone on the patio, phone in hand. My thumb hovered over a number I hadn't called in weeks, my father's. After a moment of hesitation, I tapped call. He answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." His voice was softer than I remembered, hesitant. I need to ask you something, I said. Why are you letting this happen? A pause. I didn't think it would go this far, he said eventually. It already has. It's beyond far. They tried to get me fired. They sent garbage to Dorian's job. He sighed. Your mother's just trying to protect Kendrick. No, she's not. She's trying to silence me to protect herself from admitting what she's enabled. I held my breath. You raised me better than this. And yet, here we are. He said nothing. I still love you, I said softly. But I love myself more now. And I ended the call. I didn't cry. I didn't second guess it. I just sat there for a while, watching the last rays of sunset slip behind the trees. Later that evening, as I was brushing my hair in the hallway mirror, a message popped up on my phone. It was from Jolene, my cousin who had always floated on the edge of family drama, never fully in, but never fully out. Her text read, Your mom was spotted at the venue this afternoon. She was asking for the wedding schedule. Staff said she asked about delivery times. I think something's coming. I lowered the phone slowly. I looked into the mirror and didn't flinch. Then let them come, I whispered to my reflection. The sun rose slowly over Flagstaff, casting warm amber light across the botanical garden. I'd barely slept, but when I opened my eyes, there was no hesitation. I knew today was the day everything changed, one way or another. By mid-morning, the venue team was in motion. White chairs lined the garden path. A wooden arch wrapped in lavender and ivy stood tall in front of the mountains. Guests trickled in, guided by staff with quiet smiles and discreet clipboards. In the bridal suite, I sat still as my stylist pinned the last curl in place. I watched my reflection, not for beauty, but for steel. There were no nerves, just focus. Outside, Dorian stood under the arch, his navy suit crisp, his eyes sweeping the crowd. Calm, steady. But he kept checking his watch, like he was waiting for something we hadn't written into the schedule. At 1:12 p.m., Jolene's text buzzed across my phone. She's here, with Kendrick. I didn't blink. My head of security, Marcus, intercepted them behind the garden, near the loading path. Kendrick raised his voice, something about blood and entitlement. Wanda tried a softer tone, said she just wanted a word with me. When that didn't work, she snapped. I'll sue this venue, she barked. You can't keep a mother from her daughter's wedding. Marcus remained unfazed. Your invitation was formally revoked. You're not on the list. You'll need to leave. They didn't argue much after that. They turned and walked off. Or so it seemed. The ceremony began just after 1:30. The harpist plucked a soft melody. Guests turned. The aisle cleared. My Uncle Lawrence took my arm. My heart didn't pound. I just breathed in and stepped forward. 10 steps down the path, everything went still. A hand grabbed my shoulder from behind. I turned, already knowing who it was. Wanda stood behind me, eyes burning, voice low but shaking. You're really going to ruin this family over a pile of money? I didn't step back. I didn't raise my voice. You ruined it yourself. Her hand came fast. A sharp crack echoed through the garden. She slapped me, hard. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped their phone. The harpist stopped playing. For a second, all I could hear was wind in the leaves. I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I stood there, cheek burning, eyes locked on hers. You did that, I said softly, in front of everyone. Kendrick lunged forward, face twisted in anger. Dorian stepped between us in one smooth motion. Touch her and you're done, he said. I raised my hand. No, I told him. Let the law handle this. From the third row, Eleanor, my godmother and a retired school principal, stood up and calmly dialed her phone. Yes, she told dispatch. There's been a physical assault at an event. The location is Whisper Pines Garden venue. Wanda froze. Minutes later, sirens echoed in the distance. 2 uniformed officers entered the venue gate, quietly but directly. They approached us without hesitation. Ma'am, one of them said to me, were you struck? I nodded. Yes, by her. Wanda sputtered. It was a misunderstanding, a private family moment. The officer shook his head. It's also assault. He turned to her. You'll need to come with us. Handcuffs clicked. Guests whispered. Some recorded. Most just stared in stunned silence. As they led her away, I stood unmoving in the middle of the aisle. Dorian stepped beside me, his palm slipping into mine. "You want to stop?" he asked gently. I looked around, at the stunned faces, the quiet horror, and I shook my head. "No, this is our day, let's finish it." The efficient, eyes wide but calm, nodded. "Then we begin again." We did. We said our vows with voices that trembled but never wavered. And when we kissed, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous, triumphant. Not because it was a wedding, because it was a victory. As the cheers faded and we turned to face our guests, I glanced toward the back gate. The path was empty now, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled like I meant it. We weren't broken, just rebuilt. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up on the other side of a war. The air outside was crisp and unusually quiet, as if even the wind had decided to give us space to breathe. I wrapped myself in Dorian's flannel robe and stepped out onto the balcony of our small Flagstaff apartment. Steam rose from my mug as I sipped coffee, watching the sun stretch over the pine trees. We hadn't unpacked the gifts. The decorations were still half-boxed in the living room, but none of it mattered. I was finally married, and I was finally free. But peace doesn't last long when your past refuses to let go. 3 days after the ceremony, Jolene called while I was grocery shopping. "I thought you should know," she said, lowering her voice. "Your brother's wedding is being planned at the Ridge." I nearly dropped the lemon in my hand. The Ridge was the most expensive resort in northern Arizona. Private chefs, helicopter photo ops, a spa that charged more per hour than I made in a day when I first started working. "I'm guessing he didn't fund it with sneaker sales," I muttered. Jolene hesitated. "Word is, your parents took out a personal loan. Big one." I didn't reply. I just stared at the checkout line, the woman ahead of me flipping through coupons while her toddler tugged at a balloon. The contrast made me feel sick. That night, I got a text from my father. Just 4 words. "Sorry it went that far." No explanation, no apology, just a limp attempt at cleanup. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my phone's settings and blocked both his number and my mother's. From now on, they could speak to my lawyer, not me. The next blow came subtly but loud. Aunt Corinne posted on Facebook. "There comes a time when protecting someone's failure costs you someone who's always been good." No names, no tags, but everyone knew what it meant. More relatives started declining Kendrick's invitation. Some made excuses, others were blunt. "He's not the man I thought he was." After what they did to Lacey? No thanks. The narrative my parents had tried to control, the loyal family, the good son, the difficult daughter, it collapsed under its own weight. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel smug. I felt done. "They didn't lose me," I told Dorian that weekend. "They threw me away." We had taken a short trip to Sedona, 2 hours away. Just us. No phones, no email, no wedding drama, just space. We stood together on a red rock overlook at sunset. The wind tugged at my hair. My fingers locked in his. "I'm changing my name," I said. "To what?" he asked gently. "Back to my mother's maiden name, from before she stopped being someone I recognized." He nodded. "I'll support whatever helps you feel whole." That night, we stayed in a cabin with no Wi-Fi. I journaled. Dorian read a book by the fireplace. For once, the silence didn't feel like tension. It felt like air. The next morning, over breakfast, I brought up the wedding fund. "There's about $6,000 left after the down payment," I said. "I don't want it sitting there." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you want to do with it?" "There's a nonprofit in Prescott that helps women separate from abusive families. Legal advice, housing, counseling. I want to donate it." He blinked, then smiled. "Turning the damage into purpose." I nodded. "Exactly. Let it end with good." When we got home, I opened my inbox for the first time in days. One email stood out. Subject: "Please talk to me. I miss you." Sender: Marvin Gellner. I stared at it. My heart didn't clench. My hands didn't tremble. I just closed the laptop. Letting go doesn't mean I wish them pain. It just means I don't want to be the one hurting anymore. The sun filtered in through our kitchen window, like it had done 100 times before. But that morning, the light felt different. Gentler, warmer. The kind of light that doesn't demand anything from you, just quietly says, You made it. Dorian stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming something off-key. I leaned against the door frame in an oversized hoodie, barefoot, coffee in hand. Our house still smelled faintly of the wildflowers from our wedding bouquets, now drying upside down in the dining room. It was a modest house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, on the outskirts of Flagstaff. Just enough yard for a dog we didn't have yet. Enough quiet to hear our thoughts. It hadn't been handed down, gifted, or subsidized. We paid for it ourselves. It didn't come from peace, but we'd built it with peace in mind. There were no more hushed conversations in corners, no more dread each time my phone buzzed, just wood floors that creaked when I walked, a stack of cookbooks I never finished, and a small cactus in the windowsill that leaned toward the morning light. One afternoon, Dorian and I spent hours assembling a bookshelf we'd bought on sale. The screws didn't quite match the holes. We laughed, argued about instructions, laughed again. When it stood, slightly uneven but proud, I said, "That's us, not flawless, just standing." We filled it with books and framed photos from the wedding. I slid my favorite one into the center, Dorian wiping a tear from my cheek just before I said, "I do." My inbox, though, wasn't as peaceful. Wanda hadn't reached out since the ceremony. Not a word. Not even a masked apology. Marvin had. Again. Another short email that read like a scratched record. "Just checking in. Still miss you." I didn't open it fully. I just forwarded it to Kaylin, my attorney, and archived it. Kendrick? He'd gone radio silent too, but the world hadn't. News of his upcoming wedding at the Ridge spread fast, but it wasn't the admiration he craved. A local lifestyle blogger ran a piece exposing the connection between the fund fraud and Kendrick's charity email scandal. One headline hit harder than I expected. From fund fraud to fake vows, the Gellner family spiral social media tore it apart. Comments rolled in by the hundreds. Why would anyone marry this guy? Must be nice faking broke for a living. I didn't gloat. I didn't share. I just closed the tab and went back to watering the succulents near the kitchen sink. One day, while journaling, I wrote something that surprised me. Family isn't who shares your name, it's who guards your soul. I read it twice before underlining it. Then I added, it's who stands with you when it's easier to turn away. Later that week, Jolene and Drema joined me for brunch downtown. We ordered mimosas and laughed until our cheeks hurt. When the bill came, Drema slid it over without a word and paid. She winked. "I'm investing in your next beginning." Dorian surprised me that night. As I came into the bedroom, there it was, a framed print of our wedding vows hanging just above our bed. He'd highlighted one line, "Love doesn't keep score, but it knows when to walk away." I touched the glass and whispered, "Thank you." Not for the frame, for never making me feel like I was too much or not enough. We weren't broken, just rebuilt. The next morning, we drove out to the local shelter, Hope Circle. They'd helped a woman I once mentored get away from an emotionally abusive family situation. That stuck with me. We'd agreed to donate the remaining $6,000 from our wedding fund. Inside the modest building, a counselor greeted us with warm hands and kind eyes. "I can't tell you how much this will help," she said, voice thick with gratitude. "Would you like to leave a message with the donation?" I thought for a moment. Then, steady and sure, I said, "Tell them, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering who you are, without apology." She nodded, and I felt something in my chest, like a knot finally loosening. As we walked back to the car, Dorian squeezed my hand. "No regrets?" he asked. I smiled. "Only one," I said, "that I didn't let go sooner." Before we end, I want to leave you with this, not as a victim, but as someone who found her voice in the noise. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. You don't owe loyalty to pain just because it shares your last name. Family is not who demands from you, manipulates you, or punishes you for choosing yourself. Family is who honors your peace, even when it costs them their pride. And choosing peace, no matter how late, is never weakness. It's wisdom. I share my story not to reopen old wounds, but to help someone else close theirs. So if you're watching this and you're in a space where your boundaries are being dismissed, where love comes with guilt, or where silence feels safer than truth. I hope this reminds you. You're not crazy and you're not alone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you were told you had to love? What did that decision teach you? Or maybe you're still in that place now, wondering if it's okay to let go. Tell me where you're watching from and drop a 1 inch in the comments if this story touched something real in you. I read everyone. And hey, if this story moved you, helped you reflect, or simply reminded you that healing is possible, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This channel is where real voices find space to be heard, where stories like mine, and maybe yours, matter.